a rental inspector, but I think first and foremost, I'm a landlord, and I really believe in being a landlord with heart. And I think that creates some of the challenges that I have with this program. I think the intentions are great, and I'm actually, as I do inspections, noticing things that all of us probably in our rentals could do better. And I feel like if we're going to legislate that everybody has a Mercedes grade rental property, it's going to create challenges where people who don't want to pay as much for a Mercedes can't really live in Denver anymore. And I think that's the big challenge for this legislation to navigate. So in terms of like common things that people really have to have in place to pass, the most common failure I see is missing smoke alarms. And so the old rule used to be you had one in the hallway, outside your bedrooms. If you have like a 2-3 bedroom apartment, you basically had one smoke alarm. Now each bedroom needs a smoke alarm. Basically any room other than a kitchen or a bathroom needs a smoke alarm. And many people don't know that, or we see tenants who just throw away the alarm when the battery starts tripping. And I think I could pay my son's college tuition on the amount of smoke alarms that have been just removed and lost by tenants that landlords have to replace because of this program. The other thing is GFI outlets in the bathroom. And then what I'm seeing lately is ungrounded outlets. So people have a 3-prong outlet, but they don't have a ground wire. But I think I don't want to talk about the mechanics too much, like take a bigger picture. I think it's not hard to pass an inspection. There's 7 of us inspectors. The fees are relatively reasonable. It's about, I charge $185. Some other people charge $200 or $190. If you have multiple properties, there's usually a discount. I think the application process with the city is a little challenging, and I see Nicole is on, and I would love to have her feedback. I actually filed 4 applications for, I have 22 rentals in the city of Denver. I filed 4 applications. The application process asks for a lot of information that doesn't relate to necessarily making housing safer for tenants. It's I was taught to have all my properties in single member LLCs, but now I need to provide that I'm the person behind the LLC. And so I don't know if Frank Azar, the strong arm, is going to be able to access that kind of data or not. But when I submitted those applications, one recommendation I have for everybody as you do that, save often, because the app kind of blows up and you will lose all your progress unless you have it saved and can go back to it. But then I would submit what I thought was a complete application that had my driver's license uploaded and all these things. And I would get a rejection from the city that I need to upload my driver's license. And so I would do it again, and I'd get a rejection that this document needs to be uploaded, even though I had. I went on last night and saw that all my 4 applications, which I paid $500 in application fees, were just deleted by the system. And so apparently there was a 2-week window from when the last time it got rejected, and then it just got deleted with no notification to me. So that's something I hope to get straightened out with the city, and hopefully my $500 aren't lost. I do know one person who's gotten a rental license, so the process can work. It's been challenging for me.
Hasso, before we start getting into the actual process, I do want to talk a little bit more about the inspection. So one of the things I want to talk about is, you mentioned smoke alarms. So you're saying they have to be in the bedrooms. And then do they also have to be in the living and dining room? Correct.
And if it's an open area, 1 smoke alarm is enough. But if you have any kind of separation or wall, you should have 2.
Can you talk a little bit about what kind of batteries are required? Can you use like the 9-volt battery, or does it have to be a 10-year lithium? Because I know when the process first came out, they required that it had to be wired.
I don't currently see a requirement for wired smoke alarms, and I can pull out the rules because I always have them with me, but Any smoke alarm, battery operated or hardwired, is okay, according to my understanding. And what I have ended up recommending to owners is get the cheapest one, because you're going to end up replacing so many of them. I don't recommend the built-in battery ones, because if those fail early, which they can and do, they just go in the trash. And so spending too much money on smoke alarms without replaceable batteries is just even more of a recipe for just having to replace them.
Okay, Hasso, I do have another question. In terms of, are you seeing also underneath the sink or somewhere, you have to have a fire extinguisher as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and I think that aspect has been so well advertised that everybody knows about it and complies. But the smoke alarms, everybody's like, oh, I thought the one in the hallway was enough. And people really haven't understood fully that every room needs one, unless it's a kitchen or a bathroom.
Okay. And then, so I have a couple more questions, and these were questions I got from people. Basements. Egress in the basement. So somebody has a 3-bedroom, 2 bedrooms are up, 1 bedroom is in the basement. They have an egress in the basement. What else do they need to do to that basement unit to make sure it's all part of a single family? Do they need to do anything else as long as they have the egress in that bedroom?
Not on egress. So I think the licensing program has the codes a little flipped. So I would say that in Boulder or with new building code, the egress is really important. But the rental housing code doesn't enforce egress on a single family home that has above ground living space. What it does enforce is if you have your furnace in the basement, they're requiring a 1-hour fire rated door, which is a $600 door, by the way. That's not in the building code, but it is in the rental housing code. So a lot of people are actually failing on that they might have egress, but they don't necessarily have these elevated codes around how to separate the furnace room from living space.
Okay, so you're saying if we have like a furnace room and the water heater's there too, we need a 2-hour fire, or you said a 1-hour fire door?
A 1-hour fire door, and even a 1-hour fire rating on the walls, which one way to accomplish that is 5/8 inch drywall on the inside, but new construction does not require that.
So you're telling me that the rental registry is more stringent than new construction?
That is my understanding. Yeah, I talked to a friend who builds about 50 houses a year, and he says, yeah, none of his brand new constructions signed off by Metro building departments have what the rental licensing code requires for furnace room fire rating.
Okay, so that sounds like something that we need to bring up with the rental registry process, because if they're making it harder than what the requirements for somebody buying a new home, that really doesn't make sense. And I know, like, for instance, I have a furnace that's in the crawl space. And so, how are they going to look at that? Just because, there's a dirt floor, there's maybe some cement walls, there's a wood, there's
crawl space is different. So they're more worried if you have your furnace room adjacent to living space, either accessible from a bedroom or accessible from like a den family room, then they have these really stringent requirements. And I believe it's really a cut and paste, because this year it's about multifamily inspections, although you can apply with single family. But they're applying the 5-unit plus commercial code to residential, like 1 through 4 family dwellings. And the building code doesn't do that, but the rental code, the way it's currently architected, does.
The way it's currently written, it's under furnace room door requirements are met, basement units only. And that's why I was wondering if it was multifamily, because it's saying furnace room and it's saying basement. So to me, it sounds like multifamily. I maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I didn't read that as a residential furnace. I'm looking at section 4.2 on page 14 of the guide from the city.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
Pulling it up.
I also wanted to ask about smoke detectors because in section 4.1, it says smoke detectors are required in each bedroom within 15, outside the bedroom within 15 feet and one per level, but it doesn't say that they're required in every room on every level. And it also does says 10-year lithium ion batteries are required.
Yeah, I think what you're exposing is it's a really great point. The here I'm looking at the August 18th code, and it says smoke detectors may be hardwired, plugged in, or battery operated unless specified by an applicable fire code.
And one of the things to note, they have been changing, they've been changing since they introduced this earlier this year. I think every month there's been changes to the specs. And so like
Yes.
if you have something earlier in the year, it may be out of date. And I guess you said there's one that just came out in August.
Yeah, I just
August 19th.
To the one that I'm referring to, and it's the live one on Denver website. I also see that Nicole has her hand up. I don't know if she has something that she wants to say.
Hi, yeah, I am here. I didn't want to jump in and I guess talk over Hasso. I know you've been doing such a great job. Sorry, I'll just say hello to everybody. I was kind of trying to keep quiet, but I did want to just state that there are some clarifications and additional explanation to all of the checklist items, and then also all of the items that are covered in the ordinance and how we're implementing a lot of these things. So definitely go to the guidebook. I was kind of chomping at the bit to say like what page are all of these things on, and I don't know, if that's valuable or not. Nina asked me to, kind of join the call and just listen and hear some of these questions. And I wanted to absolutely defer to what Hasso wanted to talk to you about today. And I think that we were talking about, maybe having a more in-depth conversation about like the application process and our side. Maybe, in a couple of weeks or next month or something like that. So absolutely willing to do that. Any of these questions where you're having like a interpretation issue or, you wonder how to apply it in your particular situation. We have a couple of tools on our webpage where you can send those to us. And, we'll try to be responsive. And then if needed, we can add Denver Public Health and Environment to make an interpretation or kind of give you additional guidance on the checklist items. They are the owners of the residential housing rules, which are in place now, and exist now and should be in all of the rental spaces. The license is just obviously kind of the proactive enforcement tool to make sure that these things are in those places. So I just wanted to provide those additional kind of just comments to everything that Hasso is saying. I don't think that I've heard anything too wildly off base. I do want to say hopefully we can clarify some of the things on the application that people are struggling with. I think there's been just a few items we're trying to make sure that we make improvements as we can, as we hear feedback that people think things are still confusing or don't make sense. But yeah, I don't want to steal your thunder here, Hasso. So I will definitely, just kind of hang back, but definitely want to stress that the guidebook is the best source for information. And we have had, I think, a few minor updates. If anyone is not signed up for our bulletin, go ahead and do that on our webpage. And what we do is anytime that we make a change, we go ahead and send out an update and say, bulletin subscribers, we made a few modifications, make sure you go to the latest version. So that's how we're kind of making sure that everybody stays on the same page. And also obviously suggesting that, if you don't have to, don't print it so that you can go and get the most updated version, if there is anything that's changed. We're trying to keep those changes absolutely minimal. I think we've only had maybe 2 big like batches, of changes. And again, most of those were to clarify and make things like easier or, more easy to understand. So if you're not signed up for the bulletin, please do so and definitely read the guidebook, every word if possible. Those would be my 2 comments, and I'll go ahead and be quiet until someone wants to, ask me a question directly. Maybe at the end, I think we're going to leave a few minutes.
Okay.
I just wanted to give a quick shout out. Nicole has been extremely helpful and has personally helped me substantially, and is extremely responsible and responsive at getting back to people. So I just wanted to just say that and really praise Nicole for doing a great job. Thank you.
Nicole, would you mind putting in the chat like your website and like how people can get specifically to the rental registry page? And then there were two kind of things that came up in this call so far. One was the smoke detectors. Can you clarify, is it required a 10-year lithium battery? Is that required for smoke detectors? And then are they just required in the bedroom? Or are they also required in living and dining?
Yeah, so it's about a page of clarification on the smoke detector. So I'll refer you guys to the page and I'll drop the link in the chat. Like, I think that Hasso was kind of reading it, but basically, yeah, the hardwired, plugged in, battery operated, it does call out that they should have the 10-year lithium batteries. And then also it's inside each bedroom, outside each bedroom. And then there's kind of a clarification, as long as they're within 15 feet of each entrance, it can cover multiple. And then on every occupiable level, including the basement. So we have had a few questions about that. Read the specifics, you know, and like I said, kind of read through it and make sure that you, you know, understand that. And then if you still have questions, you know, you can reach out with those. Like if something doesn't make sense or if you have a particular, like, you know, challenge in your situation. And then the other question that you asked me, I'm so sorry, you said a second thing.
So we were saying, I think you answered it, and it was like within 15 feet of an entrance. So if you have like, I have a small rental, you know, and like if I put a smoke detector in each space, like, you know, we have them in each bedroom. And then if we have one between the dining and living room, because they're small space and they're open, that should cover it. Because he said it's not required in bathrooms or kitchens. Correct.
Yeah, so you'll have to look at, yeah, you'll have to just look at those specifics. And so it's inside each bedroom, outside each bedroom. And then there's a provision where the single detector can cover multiple bedroom entrances if the detector is within 15 feet of each entrance, and then also on every occupiable level, including the basement. So again, read through that, you know, and kind of think through your property configuration. And if you still have questions, certainly, you know, reach out to us. There's some other language as well about the detectors, the extinguishers, and all of that. We've tried to clarify that pretty thoroughly. We had, you know, CPD, Community Planning and Development, including the building department, and then also Denver Fire weighed in on the, you know, language there. So that's pretty, I think that is, you know, set and really flushed out pretty well. There's a few questions in the chat. I'll try to look through those and I'll drop the link in again. I dropped it in pretty early for the guidebook, and I can put our webpage in there as well.
Okay, and Nicole, one other thing that came up that seemed like we needed some clarification was the fire rating for furnace boilers.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to call that out. There's also some, again, very well flushed out language in the guidebook there. I think that it is on page, it's like section, I think it's item 4.2. So in the guidebook, it's the guidebook page 13 that it starts there. So there's some clarification on what's a, what kind of space we're talking about there. So I can read it. And then again, please go back to that exact language. This is for basement units only. And so what it says is all areas within a basement or cellar used for habitable purposes shall be entirely separated from any furnace room by at least 1 hour fire resistive material as defined by ASTM. This includes any door. Then there's an additional explanation, and this is where you really, again, want to read through this with a fine tooth comb and make sure you understand, you know, the application for your own property. This item is only applicable to fuel-fired furnaces if a fuel-fired furnace is located in a room that opens directly into an area used for sleeping. The two rooms must be separated by a solid core 1 hour fire rated door with a smoke seal around it. So that's like really a lot of information to just hear and kind of digest, but we can clarify and talk about, you know, talk through that, Hasso, if you want, kind of offline so that you make sure, you know, you're able to apply it in these different situations. But again, please read that, you know, specific language. We did clarify whether it's habitable space versus a sleeping room, and, you know, that it's a fuel fired furnace and some of those things like that. So I think when you read through it, it's a little bit more clear than some of our earlier versions of the guidebook.
So it sounds like if it's like specifically a separate basement unit, it's more stringent than if it's part of a whole house, correct?
That's correct, yep.
Okay. And then I know, and I will probably, I know this has come up a lot. People that have, especially in like the Capitol Hill area, they've got some of those older units in the basement you know, and I wonder if Hasso or you can address that, you know, the egress concern and making sure that there's proper egress. And then there was a question about attics that somebody asked, but I know what is the proper egress needed for a basement separate unit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to live in a building at 215 East 11th. It's on the historical registry. It has, I believe, 16 units at garden level, none of which have a legitimate egress window, and it's historical. It's on the historical registry, so I don't think the Historical Society would allow egress windows there. And there isn't really room because the sidewalk butts right to the edge of the building. So to have the egress window well, which has to stick out 3 feet from the edge of the building, like that's not possible to accommodate there. So I believe I may have talked to somebody different at the city. They said there is a possibility of a variance process for apartments like that. But I don't know if Nicole might have a better answer on those.
I can give I guess a quick response to that. So again, I would say read the read the guidebook and the specifics around the dual egress requirement. That's for basement units only. So again, thinking about if you have a basement unit where someone lives down there and that's entirely their unit, if there is an issue such as like a fire, people need to be able to get out. So if one exit is blocked, we don't want them to have only one way out. That's the background there. We recognize that there are historical properties or other, situations that are going to be challenging. And my only comment to this is going to be, we have information on our webpage about what do I do if I cannot comply with the checklist requirements. And, Hasso is right. There is a variance process that exists through Denver Public Health. You can look at the information there. And then I will also stress again, please make sure you're signed up for the bulletin. If there's any, clarification on anything else or any, changes or anything else like that, that's where the information would be coming. So I'm going to put the link to that bulletin also in the chat as well. If anyone has not signed up, please do so.
I just saw a question pop up that I thought was good. So somebody has 2 garden level apartments with 2 exit doors. And if that's acceptable, or if they also need the egress window in the bedroom.
Yeah, so I think you'd need to look through the guidebook language and kind of clarify that, take a look at the property situation. I really try not to answer these questions like offhand, just again, it's like you don't want to give someone misinformation without really having a clear picture of what the situation is. And also, an inspector being on site is, really the best way. And if you have any questions about a specific interpretation or, application for your property, again, send those to us. We have a technical question tool on our webpage. We have a contact us now. We have, so many ways you can get in touch with us. All of those come directly to me one way or another, or me and my team. And if it is for public health and environment, because it's specifically related to how to apply a checklist item, you can email their team and ask them that question. Similarly, if you send it to us and it's really for them, we'll forward it along. So I'll drop their email in the chat here as well. And you can send it to both of us. You can send it directly to them, and we'll do that back and forth if we need to. But we're really trying to make sure that we have availability to answer these questions as quickly as we receive them.
Well, I have a note on that. So I've personally had my own units inspected by a different inspector. And the 1.2 says that the emergency egress must be located inside a bedroom. And that got changed on August 19th. And so I have 2 apartments that are garden level where it has egress windows, but they're not in the bedroom. And that inspector is requiring me to add another egress, a 3rd egress method in each bedroom. And I'm okay with that. It's $6,000 per window. I can afford it. But I have a retired actor, 73-year-old tenant who's paying $700 a month in the one apartment. It's way below market. And if I have to spend $6,000, I've been dealing with the ethical dilemma of, do I kick him out? Because he gets $853 in Social Security. He cannot afford market rent. And do I have to terminate a low-income tenant like that because of these costs, even though I do have dual egress? And that becomes a moral challenge for me. And I think a lot of landlords I've talked to in addition to just dealing with the technical, like where does the egress need to be and where does it need to go.
I'm sorry, I think either my screen froze or someone else's did for just a minute. So Hasso, I think, again, if you read through the guidebook clarification, there is a requirement for the, the second egress to be within the bedroom if someone sleeps and lives fully down there. If you have questions about that situation, if you have others or things like that, I'm not going to speak to what DDPHE might accept, but if you want to reach out to them with, this is the particular layout and the situation, I think that's, what we have those tools out there for. Let us know what you have a question on and take a look.
Great, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I only heard the first part of your question, so you might have said something else and I didn't hear it.
So Nicole, I just wanted to actually mention something that Hasso mentioned, like, he wants to kind of keep the rent reasonable, but if he has to add this other egress, you said there's a variance process. So let's say he already has 2 forms of egress for the small apartment, but maybe not one is in the bedroom. Can he approach the city of Denver and say, listen, it is a safe unit, trying to keep this affordable? Is there a way that you will make an exception for a unit? And what is the process to do that?
Yep. So, and again, I know I'm like a, just record, over and over and over. So we have all of this information on our webpage. If you cannot comply with the checklist item, here's, the options that you have. This is on our FAQ page. A lot of these items, are covered there. You can definitely take a look. I really cannot at all speak to what, Denver Public Health and Environment is going to accept in terms of other, other methods of compliance, or if you can show other things like that. All I can say is, we're constantly, keeping an eye on all of these things and evaluating whether we've, kind of fully understood and flushed things out. I can drop the link directly to the FAQ page. I'm scrolling as I'm trying to talk. I'm sorry. We have a question that directly addresses, what do I do if I cannot comply with the checklist item? And one of those things is you could explore the variance process. I do want to just throw that out there, that it is not like a simple, I don't want to comply with this, or I cannot comply with this, here's my route to go. I would not at all try to imply that. The variance process is meant for, you truly cannot comply, and here's how you are still meeting the requirements and like the spirit of the rules and things like that. So happy to drop that in the chat as well for folks to, take a look at.
Great. They just started some major construction outside my house, of course. There is a question that did come up, and I think this is probably a Nicole question. If you've passed a Section 8 inspection, can this be used for the Denver application? How old can this inspection be?
Yeah, so the exemptions information is also on our webpage. So the way that the exemptions work is you have to qualify for one of the exemption criteria. We have those listed out on the page. And then if you comply for a fee exemption, or you meet the requirement to apply for a fee exemption, there are special checklists that you can use in lieu of getting another inspection. So it's kind of a 2-part. You have to make sure that you meet one of the criteria, and then you also can submit your other checklists. Those do have to be within 4 years. They have to be from a particular organization. And then you also have to submit basically 3 documents. So you have to submit an affidavit, you have to submit an affordability document, which could be like your land use agreement. And then you also have to submit that other checklist. So it's pretty in depth. So again, go and take a look at that. Make sure if you're applying as an exemption, you understand what you have to comply with and meet, the standard for, and then what you would have to submit.
And Nicole, there's another question for you, and that's just about people are having trouble getting their rental applications approved. Like Hasso mentioned, he was on there, he paid all this money and now they're gone. So, when we're having and we're struggling with setting up the entity, is there like an 800, is there a hotline that we can talk to somebody right away? Because I know you're like email, but I have emailed and it's taken weeks to get back from someone. So like, is there, a better way for us to get help so that we can like get these applications in and, get the process figured out?
Yeah, so this was where, you know, when the questions were kind of coming up initially, I was kind of like, I know you and I spoke yesterday about how did you want the tone of this meeting to flow. I feel like it would really make sense to have a have a call, and we can walk through some of the, you know, specifics around the application. I will just kind of throw it out there and stress that the application is 3 parts. So one is the entity, which all that means is ownership. We need to know about who owns it. We can't just issue a license and say, here you go, you know, willy-nilly. We have no idea who we're issuing this to, you know, so that's why we need ownership information. The other part is this, it's called the license establishment, but what that means is your property. Where is this property? You know, when we need to understand some about where is this property, and again, tying it back to that ownership. And then we have the actual residential rental license portion. And that's where we're going to ask, like, how many units do you have? A little bit about the, you know, the tenant, like, or the, you know, the setup of the property, like what types of utilities do you have there and things like that. We have had a lot of confusion for some reason, I think, with this license. Again, just a different customer base in terms of, like, it's not the same as a liquor license where someone knows, okay, this is my restaurant and I'm applying for a liquor license. People are not really thinking of their residential rental property as a business, but that's kind of how the application is set up. You know, for us, we have to follow using like the tools that we have available to us, which, you know, is our licensing software. There were a few questions about, you know, like the entity. So again, we just are asking, do you own it? Which, like your case, Mina, we tried to clarify that on our webpage as much as possible to say, if, like, I'll take my situation. So my husband and I own our house. If I was applying for the license, I would only use one name. And that's just, again, the system capacity for, we need one name. We've tried to clarify that on the webpage. Then there could be like the scenario of an LLC where that's exactly true. So you're going to apply as your LLC. You're also going to give some information about any owner who owns 10% or more. So again, we can't really just issue a license to an LLC without knowing who's behind that and who's applying for this license. The application walks you through pretty well. And then we also do have a page on our website that's the application steps. So it's going to walk you through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get these things, you know, ready. And it gives all of the information as far as, you know, make sure you have this document. If you don't know what this document is, you know, here's clarification on what it is, or, you know, where you might be able to find it and things like that. So we've tried to do a good job. I do think that, you know, in some cases it's a lot of information and people don't really like read through all of those different, you know, items. And that's where people are getting jammed up. As far as the, you know, can you ask us questions or how responsive can we be? I have to personally take a little bit of, you know, I guess, responsibility and accountability here. So all the questions, you know, are coming into us. We have multiple tools that you can use. We can't necessarily say, hey, call me anytime, day or night, because again, I have, you know, multiple duties, you know, related to this. If you email or call through 311 or use, you know, our licenses at denvergov.org, those come to us, and our, you know, time frame that we try to answer those within is 5 days. It's 5 to 7 days is our target. And right now, you know, I just assigned all of those calls in the queue today, and they'll be flushed out pretty much by the end of the day. So I think at one point we were maybe a little bit backed up on calls, but we're really trying to, you know, answer these as quickly as they come in. And that's the best way to reach us too, because again, we're trying to, you know, do some tracking on our side so that we make sure we're geared up and have these resources to answer those questions. So that's where, you know, we want to be keeping track of those. And when my boss says, well, why do you need more help? I can say, well, here's why, you know, and here's the list of, you know, questions we've been getting. When you are in the application and you have a question and you're like, I have no idea what they're asking me for here. This is not meant to be a joke. Read the screen, you know, above. There's instructions on basically every single page. I understand that sometimes it's like you get jammed up and you're like, what are they asking me here? Usually there's an instruction, you know, we're asking you this, or this is what this or this means. The other thing we do have is a video on our webpage that walks through every single step of the application to show, you know, when it asks you on this screen to enter your true name of your entity, this is what we mean by that. We have a few modifications to that video that'll be coming soon to make things a little bit more clear. You know, I have tons of lists everywhere, you know, of things that we've heard, making sure that, you know, we capture those items. So we're trying to make small improvements anytime that we do get that feedback or questions that we hear, you know, over and over. So I can drop this into the chat, I guess, kind of as my final chat, you know, reminder of the webpage. So again, we have an application page that has step-by-step. We have FAQs that address many of these questions. And then we do have our video, which I think if, people hit those top 3 things, it would really help you out, before you get to that. Also, I know, Hasso said this before, but the checklist and the guidebook are on our webpage. So we've advised folks from the very beginning, if you are going to have an inspection and, you have a rental property, review those and understand, what they're going to be looking for. So that way, you're prepared and you can get ready for these things as much as possible. That's really the, I guess, kind of ideal things you could be doing.
So Nicole, can I briefly just ask, so the step is somebody gets an inspection and then they have, after their inspection is approved, they have 2 months then to apply for the rental application, correct?
90 days.
You have 90 days. So once you have an inspection, you need to complete the application within 90 days. If you do submit with a checklist that has a failing item, so meaning, you had something that you're going to go get a permit and do the work and come back, and Hasso is going to come back and inspect it with a re-inspection, we have a process outlined in the guidebook for that as well. You would need to submit within that initial 90 days, and then you have 90 days to make a correction to your application.
If somebody needs to get a permit, so let's say they get inspected and they're like, oh, you don't have an egress, you need to go get an egress. The permitting process in Denver has been taking a long time. Is there a way to fast track? Like if you're like, I have to get a GFCI in my bathroom, or I have to get an egress, is there a special way to get that ahead of the queue?
There's not, unfortunately, everyone needs a permit, right? For whatever their situation is, it's just as important. So you have some issue at your house, and you need to do the work, or, you're up against deadlines for your loan, and everything like that. I actually started with community planning and development, so I understand the backlog of permit items, very well. What we advise again is, so when you're getting ready to have your inspection, review that checklist in the guidebook. And if you say, oh, I'm not going to comply with this or that item, you can always do the work in advance of that. So before you schedule with Hasso, if you need a permit to change XYZ, you could get that flushed out first, and then have the inspection. So again, I think as much as possible, just reviewing the information, being prepared for what is your property situation. We've tried to be very transparent with the inspection checklist and the guidebook to say, this is out there, the inspector is not going to come and say, surprise, here's what I'm looking at. Everything that's on the checklist is what's applicable. So if there's something else that the inspector notes and, you guys talk through or something like that, the inspection checklist, it is what it is. And so that would be my recommendation. Again, I can't tell anybody what to do or give you advice, but if I had a property, I feel like I would try to make sure I understood, am I going to comply with all of these items or not? And if I wasn't, try to do that like pre-work before you even contract with the inspector, because again, once you have that inspection, the clock is ticking.
Yes, Nicole said something really powerful there. I think one of my jobs is actually to not just show up and take people's money and fail them. It's to pre-screen, and I've turned probably away like 150 inspections for people who won't pass because of egress windows. And I tell them, get it in place so that you can pass the first time, because otherwise you may end up paying for an inspection twice, because egress window permits can take 9 months, and that doesn't fit in the 3-month window.
Hi, we're sort of running out of time, but I did get 2 questions related to actually attic units. And I think that's something we always talk about basement. So let me read these and see if either one of you, so Cheryl says, I'd like to cover the attic spaces too. I have 2 bedrooms in the attic with narrow steps. Will that be grandfathered if those steps aren't compliant? And I guess when you do your inspection, what are you looking for in stairs? I know you're probably looking for hand railings, but a lot of us have older homes and the stairs were built a little bit narrower than they are today. I don't know if you can address that one. And then there's another question on attic too that I can ask you.
Well, I mean, I think the checklist, I'm kind of parroting Nicole. She would tell you guys the same thing. Section 1.1 says that every dwelling unit shall have a means of egress leading to a safe and open space at ground level, and the stairs need to be in good condition. So it's not specific about, is it today's stair codes versus the stair codes at the year of construction, but about having safe and sound stairs. And so, yeah, there's some wiggle room, but that's why you have these. The reason there's so few inspectors is we took a lot of exams about like all aspects of the code. And so I think we have a pretty good way of saying, are the stairs adequate or not? And like loose treads, anything dangerous is not good, but a sound stair that's that would comply in my view.
Great,
And
thank
then
you.
the other question I have is, oh, Cheryl, did you want to add anything to that question?
No, I saw some measurements about the steepness of the stairway that I don't know the steepness of my stairway, but I know they're steep. So that's what concerned me. And for those of us who have historical buildings that were turned into apartments, we're going to have issues that don't meet modern terms. And I see this, all of the regulations being set up for those who have constructed new apartment buildings. They're going to fly through this process where we're going to struggle, and getting contractors and permits lined up to, retrofit a stairwell is going to be massive. So that's the question I had.
Having owned buildings like that, I think a lot of those old buildings, you cannot easily retrofit stairways without like losing a lot of square footage. I think right now the rental code does not have a bullseye on your back on stairs. So
Okay,
that's my take on it.
thank you.
Hasso, I have a question, and this is this came in the chat. I have a true loft conversion downtown. The space is one large room with a metal platform that is considered a bedroom per 2001 when the building was converted. The water heater is located up on the platform. The furnace is suspended from the ceiling. Do you know how would you treat this as part of an inspection? What would you look for? And that's a pretty unusual case, because I'm trying to figure out how they would suspend a furnace from the ceiling. And this is from our Roth 7. So if they want to add any clarification, feel free.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys.
I would have to really look at the code. I'm going to kind of parrot Nicole. You have great wording around this, Nicole. I mean, I think the big thing is it says that it must have the right combustion air, external combustion air. So I would want to look at, is the furnace a high efficiency unit that pulls its own air in and own air out? If it's pulling oxygen out of his sleeping room, I would really look at this code hard to determine whether that's safe or needs to be retrofitted.
Yeah, I'm sorry if you're waiting for any addition from me. I would honestly not even speak to that piece. That would be a interpretation from either us and or DDPHE, most likely DDPHE. So I'm gonna build out like a lengthy last chat message here. I have an email that I usually send that has all the different links that I mentioned before, like 4 or 5 of them. So I'm gonna put that in. It'll be like 4 or 5 links. Really though, come to our webpage. If you just go to the main page and look through, the way it's built out, we have our FAQ page. We have a page that says for property owners and managers. It's going to walk you through. It's going to say before you begin. There's an application page that again, it has, if you still can't find something, contact us. Did you walk through these different steps? We have our online video, again, related to the inspection. We have, a place where we say, if you have a question for DDPHE, submit it over here. So really not wanting to just use that as like my home base, but it really is kind of my, place where I say, we want to put all of this information out, but it's a lot, so for me to just say it, I understand can be helpful, but it's really like, you're going to hear it and then say, what the heck did she say? So go there and everything is right there for you. We've really done a lot to build that out and make sure that all the info is there. We're trying to reach, tens of thousands of applicants, potentially for this program. So that's why we really want to stress, go back there, because if anything changes or if, you didn't capture all the information, it's there for you.
Okay, we're kind of at the end. We actually kind of went over our allotted time. So I do want to thank Hasso for coming on. I want to thank Nicole for coming on. Any of the information, Nicole, that you're posting in the chat, I'm also going to get from you, and I'm going to publish it to our Toilets to Tenants Facebook page.
Perfect.
And then I also will have this call recorded. We'll have that as well on our Tenants to Toilets page. And it sounds like, Nicole, we probably want you back next month, at the end of the month, you know, to talk, because as we get closer to the end of the year, people are going to be trying to get their multifamily units registered. And I guess just one last thing, what happens January 1st if I don't have my multifamily registered? You know, is Denver doing some kind of process to send people postcards as a reminder? Like, you know, is there anything in place?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. There were a few things there. So number one, we actually did do a mass mailer. So if you own a property and you have a different address for your mailing versus physical address, you should have gotten a postcard, and it says, FYI, you know, you're required to have a rental license. That's probably going to be our only mailer. We are doing, you know, social media, we're doing news, we're doing radio. You know, again, we're kind of trying to get this out everywhere that we can, but there won't be like another direct notice to property owners, most likely. So you should have gotten that postcard. It links you back to our webpage with some of the information. Again, you know, our goal is compliance and bringing people into, you know, kind of the license, you know, industry here. So we don't really have an answer as far as like on January 2nd, we're coming to your house and your house and your house. But, you know, if you are operating without a license, you know, it's illegal to do so. So if you have a rental property, you know, please get your inspections, call Hasso or the other inspectors on the list and get those inspections taken care of and started. I did want to clarify again, just on, so 2022 is voluntary compliance, meaning there's discounts for everybody on the, no, the license is not transferable at all. I do want to note that it popped up in the chat right here. So 2022, there's a discount, whether you're multifamily or single family, on the application fee. It's normally $50. It's $25 through 2022 for everybody. In 2023, multiple units have to apply for the license. And so just to clarify, I know you mentioned it before, that's if you own both sides of a duplex or a triplex or an entire apartment complex or whatever it may be. That also applies to if you have 2 condos in the same building, you know, or something like that. This is by property. So if you have 2 single family homes, like you have one in Central Park North and then you have one in the Highlands, those are each individual. So it's how many units you own at that property. That's in 2023, single units are required, or 2024, single units are required. So 2023 is coming up if you have more than one. If you just have one, you can talk to us in 2024, basically, but you do get that discounted application fee if you apply basically your year before.
All right, well, on this happy note, and because they're starting construction, we're going to end the call. And again, if anybody has questions, you can feel free to reach us through our Toilets to Tenants Facebook page. And then Hasso, if you want to quickly put your phone number in the chat, if people want to reach you to schedule an inspection, or if they have questions, or however your email, however you want people to respond to you. But I want to again thank Nicole, and thank you, Hasso, for coming in and talking about the process. And I appreciate it. And then Nicole, we'll just talk about scheduling something for next month, because it sounds like there's still a lot of questions and we just don't have the time to cover today. So
absolutely, it's a lot. So thanks for having me and listening to all the information.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.